Several years ago, I made a video, if I remember correctly, entitled KE-Jetronic Euphoria, where I played around with the forbidden adjustment screw or calibration screw on the EHA valve of my blue-black 124. And the reason I went down that path is because I couldn't see anything wrong with how anything was configured or set up on that car or the condition of anything, but it had a lame acceleration of 0 to 100 in 10 seconds, which is unacceptable. After playing with that adjustment screw, simply turning it in the enriching direction by half a turn, that 0 to 100 sprint changed from 10 seconds to 7. And that's a significant change just by turning one screw half a turn. I don't recall what my lower chamber pressure was at the time. It's possible my EHA valve was on its last legs anyway, because that's one of the symptoms, among others, obviously, is having ridiculously lame acceleration, because it's unable to have a sufficient differential between the system and the lower chamber pressure. Now, the specs for my 104 is 6.2 to 6.4 bar system pressure. And with the engine coolant at operating temperature, i.e. around 80 degrees or a little bit more, it should be 0.4 bar below that system pressure. I'm going to go ahead and measure that. I've got a gauge set. I don't know where you buy them anymore. I don't know if they're still available. I think there's some Chinese master fuel injection kits you can get that have adapters for KE-Jetronic, but I wouldn't think that the accuracy would be very good, and I certainly wouldn't think the quality of the hoses used would be any good. And I certainly wouldn't count on the connectors being any good for more than a single use before failing, as is typical with Chinese-made tools. What I have is old, and it's from the USA. I don't know if it's available anymore. I'm pretty sure it's not. And it goes without saying, if you start screwing around with this system and making it run outside of specification, if you're in a country that does emissions testing, it will probably fail. The test is done with the EHA valve disconnected, and we'll go ahead and do that now. Well, after I warm up the engine. Out of interest, since I've stopped using 98 fuel on both of my cars and I've gone to 95, this thing seems to run so much better, and it starts first time as well. It does have, or it's always had with my ownership, a bit of an issue starting when it has been sitting for ages. If it's driven regularly, it's not an issue, but if this car sits for a long time, it may take 2 attempts to start it, and it is not the fuel pump side, because I can prime the fuel pumps as much as I like. It will still stumble and stall on that first start after it's been sitting for a long time. That could be the fuel injectors leaking, though that's unlikely because they're all brand new and it's never changed despite changing those. Everything on this system is brand new. Nothing has ever stopped that problem, and there's no external leaks other than underneath the fuel distributor. There is regularly a small puddle of raw fuel that has dripped out of the fuel distributor piston area. And that seal is obviously new as well, because I resealed that thing, and that didn't make any difference either. So I suspect there's a little bit of wear on that piston or bore, and that's what's causing the loss of fuel pressure. It's not a big deal. If I actually drove this car more often than I did, that would be a non-event. It's just when it's been sitting for weeks or months that it loses the fuel pressure to ensure a first-time start. Yeah, it's running absolutely magnificent. Started first time today, and it has been a while since I've driven it, so I'm not sure why. Maybe it's liking that 95 fuel a bit better than the 98 I was using. Anyway, I'm just sitting here rambling. I'm actually just waiting for it to get up to operating temperature, or the coolant to get up to operating temperature, and then I'm going to take those measurements. So the gauge is currently connected to the lower chamber. We can see 5.9 bar. when I open the valve and join them together, I see 6.3. So that's exactly 0.4 bar differential between the two chambers. I'll show you how this is connected shortly, because I'm sure I will be asked. And you can test that as much as you like, and it's always the same. 6.3 to 5.9. So that adjustment I did way back in the day has basically just made my worn out and tired EHA valve back into spec. So I've gotten some more life out of it. So this is how it's connected up. I've got the EHA valve disconnected electrically. I've got the gauge in permanent connection to the lower chamber, which is what you can see on the gauge. I've got the upper chamber connected to the ball valve, and when I open that valve, the chambers join together, and then I can see the system pressure, which is basically taking the EHA valve out of service. It's just joining both sides together. And that's it. That's how easy it is. The real fix, obviously, would be to replace that EHA valve, but I'm not keen on doing that, even though the manual says so, because that forbidden adjustment did bring it back to life, and it's not leaking externally, so why throw away something that still works? Of course, the actual fix would be to follow the damn manual and just install a brand new EHA valve. I don't want to do that. I've got two brand new ones here for the day when that becomes necessary. I don't believe in throwing out OG EHA valves when they work basically 90% perfectly. The problem was solved by playing with the forbidden screw that's hidden underneath that cover there. Giving it half a turn brought it back into spec on my blue-black 124. When they fail terminally, you get fuel leaking out of these weep holes on the back here, and there's no fixing that. It's junk once that starts. And neither of mine are doing that, so I don't really want to throw those away. It's not a case of being a tight ass. As you can see, I've got two of them here brand new in the box. These things are not cheap, but I can pretty much guarantee at some stage they're going to be discontinued. The genuine Bosch ones anyway. So I want to keep these as long as I can. And I did buy these on special on eBay when there was some promotion going on. I think I saved like $100 each on those. If I see another promotion going on, I might even buy some more, because you can't have too many of these things lying around, especially when they will be discontinued at some stage.